They did it after an 0-2 start and after beatdowns against the Patriots and Bills. Can the Panthers bounce back yet again in this crucial NFC South division showdown against Atlanta? I'll give you my 3 keys to victory right here on Locked On Panthers.
You are Locked On Panthers, your daily Carolina Panthers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of the Locked On Panthers podcast, the part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, as always, Julian Council, talking Carolina Panthers with you every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and yes, of course, Friday, your team every day. That's our motto here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Thanks for watching the show right here on YouTube and listening wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. Today's episode of Locked On Panthers is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Carolina Panthers headed to Atlanta on Sunday to face off against a Falcons team that they beat 30-0 back in week 3. A big bounce back game for Carolina after losing in week 1 and 2 on the road against the Jags and the Cardinals. And looking at what happened last week, the Panthers riding high off of a walk-off win against the Packers, go and lay an egg. And the players admitted that they weren't focused last week. For whatever reason, they felt like they could just dog it at practice all week long and show up on Sunday and beat the Saints. But it's a divisional game. And in those games, your opponent, whether they're 1-8, 3-6, or like Carolina 5-5, they're going to show up to play every single time. I guess Atlanta didn't back in week 3, but you understand what I'm trying to say here. And the Panthers took them lightly. And they did not have the attention to detail, the focus that they needed to have. And they had a sobering loss coming off of what I thought a franchise-altering win up in Green Bay. Now can they bounce back yet again? That has been the DNA of this team so far this season. We'll talk about that later on. The injury report will be out on Friday afternoon. I'm giving you this show a little bit earlier than that. Got to head down to Charleston for a wedding I got to attend on Friday. So giving you my thoughts. And I'm looking at it. I pretty much have a good idea who's going to play, who's not going to play on Sunday. But let's start off this Friday as we start off every single Friday throughout the regular season here on Locked On Panthers. And that's by me giving you my 3 keys to victory for the Panthers in their upcoming matchup. Key number 1. We all saw it last week. When you stop the run, the Panthers cannot win. Bryce Young and the passing game at large has not been good this season. They have not lived up to the expectations that a lot of people had going into the year. And there were certainly questions at receiver, especially after they traded away Adam Thielen to go back home to Minnesota just for the Vikings not to really play him. That, okay, great. You move on from Adam. You have Xavier Legette coming in his second year, which has not necessarily been all that great. Jalen Coker, he's coming to his second year. He missed a lot of time because of an injury. Tedero McMillan has been everything and more for the passing game, but there were still plenty of questions about what they were going to be. And so far, they really haven't answered those questions. And they have had more concerns than I think people had heading into the season when looking at that wide receiver core. But the passing game overall, whether it's the pass catchers or the quarterback, has been bad. And the numbers bear it out. Right now, according to True Media, the Panthers are 30th in pass EPA on offense this season, but they're 9th in rush EPA offensively, which has been their saving grace. When you look at their pass EPA, they're sandwiched in between the Raiders, the Jets, the Titans, and the Browns. Those are 2-win and 1-win football teams. The saving grace of this offense has been the run game, but really Rico Dowdle, had he not come to Carolina this offseason and ran with a purpose like he has so far this year, we're looking at another 2-win football team right now in Carolina, maybe a 3-win team at best. But they are winning a lot of these games and have won a lot of these games because of Rico and because what they've been able to do, putting together a top 10 rushing offense in the league, despite having to start 8 different offensive line combinations in the first 10 games. So they've got to find a way to find balance. And for the second straight week, mind you, Rico Dowdle has been on the injury report with a quad injury. And I asked Dave Canales about this on Wednesday, if because Rico clearly is someone that they're trying to monitor throughout the week. He's clearly dealing with something headed into the third straight game. It appeared to happen against Green Bay. He played through it. Last week didn't really seem like the same guy. The Saints also were ready for him, but did not have a great game. That goes to everybody offensively and in that run game, of course. But now heading into this week, another week where they're trying to limit him. He did not practice on Wednesday, was limited on Thursday. I'm guessing he'll be a full participant on Friday and then be good to go on Sunday down in Atlanta. But there's 6 more games after this one. And if Carolina wants to break down that door and get to the postseason, they're going to need Rico Dowdle to be at his best. And as the season wears on, we see the attrition throughout the NFL. Are they putting too much on his plate? And I asked Dave, would you just kind of consider more of a rotation? I'm not saying do Rico this series, Chuba this series, or Rico this series. Chuba. I don't want to see any of that nonsensical stuff that we saw for those 2 weeks. I understand. I'm not advocating for Chuba Hubbard to take back the starting role. All I'm asking is that when Rico has been the starter, you back to those games against Miami and Dallas, he didn't finish the game. He cramped. Trevor Etienne finished those games. And Rico did even mention himself in the locker room that getting Chuba back was a good thing just because he hadn't been able to finish the games. And you look at it now, he's clearly banged up. Do you want to put all that load offensively on him? And I know I'm the guy who says use them, abuse them, then lose them. So, yeah, it's crazy coming from me, but you got to have balance. You got to find a way to not put all the pressure on Rico offensively every single week, and the load that he's having to carry for this team the last 2 weeks, especially, it's not sustainable. So they've got to find balance offensively, and it's not, again, just Bryce. It's also the receivers. Like Bryce, in his own right, you look at him among qualified quarterbacks, he's 31st out of 33 in passer rating. He's 31st out of 33 in EPA per dropback. He's 30th in pass attempts over 20 yards. So they're not stretching the field. That's been a big complaint and concern for people throughout the week and throughout the season, really. And especially when you look back at how things played out in the final 9 games last year, final 10 games, I suppose, with Bryce as starting quarterback. But you look at the wide receivers, Panthers wide receivers ranked 31st in the NFL with 10.9 yards per reception this season. The wide receivers are also 31st in yards after the catch per reception with 3 yards per catch per yards after the reception, after the catch, whatever. But they're not doing anything when they get the ball. So it's not just on the quarterback. You look at Panthers offensive, the wide receivers EPA when targeted, it's 29th in the NFL. And they're 26 right now, explosive receiving percentage. So when they catch the ball, they're not really doing anything. They're not really having explosive plays, which would be 16-plus yard receptions. Everybody involved's got to be better. And I'm not blaming the offensive line because I think that they've played well, especially considering all the injuries. But Bryce, the receivers, guys, get it together, take some pressure off of Rico, and find some balance offensively starting on Sunday. Number 2, got to stop the run. The win in week 3 versus Atlanta is one of the 3 games the Panthers defense posted a negative EPA against the run. The other 2 games were losses against Jacksonville and against Buffalo. So that's really great to hear that so far through 10 games, only 3 of them, the Panthers posted a negative EPA defensively against the run. Since that game, Carolina's 7th in yards per attempt allowed at 3.9 yards. They're 8th in defensive total rush EPA, and they're 6th in defensive rushing success rate. So they've been a top 10 run-stopping defense, and that's even counting that game against Buffalo where James Cook ran wild against them inside Bank of America Stadium. The Falcons, though, over the last 4 games have really struggled to run the football. During their 4-game losing streak, they have rushed for 62 yards, 45 in 71, and losses against San Francisco, Miami, and New England. They did run for 140 yards in their overtime loss last week in Berlin against the Colts. But overall, they've not been good running the ball the last month of the season. They're 28th in EPA per rush, rushing yards, and yards per attempt over the last 4 weeks. And if you look at Bijan Robinson, for whatever reason, I called him Bijan Robinson yesterday on the show. I hear it 2 different ways. I always knew it was Bijan because he had the whole Bijan Mustardson NIL deal back at Texas. But then I started hearing people call him Bijan Robinson. I don't know. I'm going to call him Bijan today because that feels way more comfortable. And then Aaron Freeman's going on calling him Bijan. I feel like an idiot, which Obviously, I am, but still, you don't want to feel like that. You want to kind of be ignorant to your idiocy. But here we are. Bijan Robinson is 20th out of 39 running backs of at least 25 plus attempts since week 7 in rushing in the NFL, and counting those guys 25 plus rushing attempts over the last 4 weeks. He ranks 36th in EPA per rush. That's out of 39 running backs, and he's 29th in yards per attempt. So he has not been great. The Panthers did hold him to 72 yards on 13 carries back in week 3. So even though Atlanta has not run the ball well over the last 4 weeks, their 4-game losing streak, the last time they did win a game against Buffalo, they ran for over 200 yards. So that is their key to win this game on Sunday. Certainly offensively for the Falcons, but defensively for Carolina, that's how you win. Stop the run. And at number 3, I'm going to probably just bring this up every single week because this has obviously been a big issue for Carolina this season. Turnovers. It's killing them. It's just a fact. The Panthers are 26th in the NFL in turnover margin at a -5. The Falcons somehow are 8th at +5. That's 10-point difference when it comes to turnover margin in the NFL this season between Carolina and Atlanta. The Falcons are only 29th, though, in points off of turnovers. They only have 16 so far this season. But check it. The Panthers have allowed their opponents the most points off of turnovers this season with 68, which is just, again, a miracle that they're even sitting here at 5-5, considering that stat. And the Panthers are 31st in turnover EPA. They're not going to win this game on the road by losing a turnover margin. And the 2 times they've won this season by losing a turnover margin were against the Cowboys and the Dolphins. At home, not good football teams. Atlanta, also not a good football team, but a desperate football team, and playing at home. Don't turn it over. Don't get the few Falcon fans that are in Mercedes-Benz Stadium into the game. That's just something that is not sustainable. And as you play tougher opponents here in the final 7 weeks, you can't have that continue to plague you. So turnovers, cut them out if you want to win this game. Stop the run and find balance offensively if you can. Those are my 3 keys to victory on Sunday for the Panthers against the Falcons. The injury report will come out on Friday, but I got a pretty good idea of who's going to play, who's not going to play. We'll talk about that here in just a moment on Locked On Panthers. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. You and I make decisions every day, but on Prize Picks, being right can get you paid. Don't miss any of the excitement this sports season. Whether you're following the NFL, NBA, or both, there's no better time to jump in on the action. If you haven't tried it yet, Prize Picks is the simplest way to play. Just pick more or less on at least 2 player stats, and if you get them right, you win. It takes less than 60 seconds to make your lineup, and you can play anywhere Prize Picks operates, including California, Texas. If you're down there in Atlanta for the game, you can play in Georgia, and of course here in the old North state of North Carolina. I've been using Prize Picks during both football Sundays and NBA tip-offs. It keeps every game exciting. The new stacks feature is a game changer. You can pick more on Charlotte native Steph Curry's points, threes, and assists in the same lineup. Plus, if one of your players leaves early with an injury, the injury reboot saves your lineup from a loss every single time. Download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL for $50 in lineups after your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, it's good to be right. Let's take a look at the injury report heading into the Panthers Week 11 matchup in Atlanta. Now, the final injury report will come out around 12:40 p.m. on Friday afternoon as Dave Canales will address the media one final time ahead of this matchup against the Falcons, and that's when you'll get injury designations. But typically, after Wednesday and Thursday's injury report comes out, you have a pretty good idea of who's going to play. Now, I've waited this season for Dave to talk. I haven't really gone over there in a while, but maybe I'll go. Not this week, but in a couple weeks. But I like to hear what he has to say because there have been times where it's like, okay, you think someone's not going to go, but then they're going to go. So I just kind of like to wait until that information comes out later on that Friday. Now, I hate not having the show out to y'all on Friday morning, but it's there for your afternoon commute. And if you don't even work on Friday, which I feel like people don't work on Fridays anymore, you got the show right there for you whenever you need it there in the afternoon. But getting into it, Trevin Wallace, we know he will not play on Sunday. He's dealing with a shoulder injury, which has been something plaguing him over the last couple of weeks. Dave Canales did say on Wednesday that he was week to week. And then when asked, that he did say that he would not play, Trevin Wallace not play on Sunday. It was a stinger a couple weeks ago. I think it was in the Bills game that occurred, where everybody was injured in that game. Then he injured it again last week. So just one of those things where he needs a week. And hopefully it's only a week for the Panthers defensively, as, again, they've played a lot better this year. And Trevin Wallace, who's been wearing that green dot, has stepped up since taking over the helmet comm and the leadership role there in the middle of that defense, calling out the signals coming from Jerry Rivera, the Panthers DC. But yeah, he will not play on Sunday. We'll find out next week whether he's going to play, but he has not practiced at all this week with a shoulder. And it kind of feels like one of those pain tolerance things. And they just want to give him 1 week off to figure it out, get better. And we'll see how that goes as the season plays out here over the final 6 games after Atlanta on Sunday. Claude Sherless, he will step up into the starting role on Sunday. And I did ask Claude, because Dave Canales would not say who's going to wear the green dot on Sunday. Newsflash, Christian Roseboom, because guys, he's a vet. He wore it at the beginning of the season. And according to Claude, one time, one play, has he ever had the green dot. And it happened last year. There's all the injuries they had in linebacker. He had to do it for a play because someone had to go out for a play or whatever. So he was laughing about, like, yeah, I have experience, one play. So I don't think they're going to be asking Claude to do that, but he has certainly grown in this role. And I asked him about that on Wednesday. He talked about just more familiarity, being able to work with the defensive staff again this season. So I'm hoping that he has a good game and that he can continue to be a reliable backup for Carolina at that linebacker spot on the inside. Rico Dowdle, again, mentioned that last week. Rico was a DNP on Wednesday that did not participate, limited participation on Thursday, then full on Friday. So far this week, it's been DNP and LP. So I'm assuming he's going to be a full participant on Friday, and it'll be the same cadence, and I'm guessing that's just how it's going to be the rest of the year, at least until the bye week coming up here in a couple of weeks, as they're going to have to monitor that quad injury. And we'll see if they limit his touches a little bit more, just so that they're not overworking him. And I get it. I'm the guy who said use him, abuse him, and lose him, but still, man, that's your offense. So you gotta be a little bit smarter when it comes to Rico at this point in time in the season, especially your passing game is going to be as bad as it has been so far this year. But I'm expecting that he'll play. Chandler Zavala, he should be good to go as well. He had an elbow injury that was suffered in that game against Green Bay. He did not participate at all last week, and he missed the game against the Saints. He has been a full participant on Wednesday and Thursday at practice, so he's on schedule to play. Now, Dave was asked, would he step in at right guard? You look at the unofficial depth chart on Panthers.com. He, that being Chandler Zavala, is starting right guard. But Austin Corbett stepped into that role last week in Chandler's absence. And we recall as well, when Austin first got to Carolina, he was a starting right guard. He's no longer the starting center. That's Cade Mays. Dave was not saying who was going to be. I don't know what kind of competitive advantage that's giving them by not revealing that information. My guess is that Austin Corbett will be the starting right guard on Sunday. And I know there's been people out there saying, whoa, that Jake Curhan guy looked pretty good when he stepped in. And I give Curhan a lot of credit for the way he played in that one against the Packers. But he was on a practice squad on another team like a month and a half ago. They did not bring him in here with the expectation that he was going to play. Remember, Chandler Zavala, Austin Corbett were a part of the guys that they brought back from a good offensive line last year. And you may have your frustrations with Zavala and with Corbett, but they're better options than Jay Curhan. So maybe I'm wrong, but we'll just expect Corbett to be there at right guard on Sunday. If it's Chandler, okay. But I don't expect it to be Jay Curhan. It's going to be either Chandler Zavala or more likely Austin Corbett on Sunday, starting at right guard, which would be the same combination they had last week with Icky, Damian Lewis, Cade Mays, Austin Corbett, and then Taylor Moton at right tackle. Bryson Tremaine did not play last week with a shoulder injury. He's been a full participant throughout the week so far here heading to week 11 match against Atlanta. Dan Jacinta, rather, as I try to get that name out, he was elevated from the practice squad last Saturday. I was walking inside of Kenan Stadium for the Tar Heels game against Stanford, which was just, God, horrible to watch. Because whatever. We're not going to talk about that. But I was walking in there when I got the text message telling me and all the rest of the media what the Saturday moves for the Panthers made ahead of that game on Sunday. And I was not really registering what was happening. All I saw was like, oh, Mike White, not on the team anymore. Huh. Interesting. I didn't really look at and saw that Dan Chisena, wide receiver, was going to play, which very clearly told you that Bryson Tremaine was going to miss because Dan Chisena is a special teams kind of guy, just like Bryson Tremaine is at this point in time with David Moore on IR with that elbow injury. And I also didn't really register that, oh, wait, that means that Hunter Renfrow is not going to play. So I'm guessing Hunter Renfrow is not going to play again this season unless there's an injury, and knock on wood, to like Jimmy Horn and Jalen Coker. Like, it's not just Jimmy Horn. It's Jimmy Horn and Jalen Coker, and David Moore doesn't come back anytime soon. That's the only way Hunter Renfrow is going to get back on the field. And just to think that late in July, on that Monday, Dabo Swinney, he's in town, talk about how good Clemson's going to be that year. And Clemson's not been good this year at all. But just talk about, oh yeah, I played golf recently with Hunter and just so good to see him back. It was Hunter Renfrow Day. Hunter looked great. Then he hurt his hamstring. And then he came back and did nothing and then got cut from the team. And then there are people like, oh, maybe you're going to bring him back after trading Adam Thielen. And that wasn't really the case because they wanted Delvon Campbell instead. And then Jalen Coker got hurt. And it's like, okay, fine, we'll bring back Hunter Renfrow. And he got some more assurances. But those assurances were monetary and not that he would play once other guys got healthy. And look, it is what it is. Glad to see him come back this year, be home in the Carolinas. But looking at just the way things have played out for him this season, I would not expect to see Hunter Renfrow at all the rest of the year, just based off of the fact that Dan Chisena got to play last week, and now Bryson Tremain's back this week after missing last week with a shoulder injury. Lastly, Lathan Ransom, this came out on Wednesday from Dave Canales. He injured his hand versus the Saints, and then apparently had a surgical procedure on Tuesday to clean up whatever that was, and they were going to wait to see whether he could play this week or not. He has not practiced at all on Wednesday or on Thursday. It's possible just because of where he's at recovering from that surgery that they put him in a club and he could play on Sunday. That's something that we won't really know more about until Dave speaks to the media again on Friday, which is part of the reason why I wait just to hear what he has to say. But I'm not sure whether Latham's going to play or not on Sunday, but he is dealing with a hand injury. So that is a look at the injury report heading to week 11 against Atlanta for your Carolina Panthers. Can this team respond yet again? We'll talk about that here in just a moment on Locked On Panthers. NFL season is back, and honestly, there's nothing better than being in the stadium surrounded by fans cheering on your team. But let's be honest, getting tickets can be a hassle between queues, login screens, and prices jumping at checkout. It's frustrating. That's why I use Game Time, the app that gives the advantage back to fans. Game Time is fast, easy, and backed by the Game Time guarantee. You'll always get 100% authentic tickets delivered on time and at the best price. Plus, all fees are included, so the price you see is the price you pay. I pulled up Game Time in just a couple of taps. I saw amazing deals. I'm talking about your favorite NFL games as low as $100 and looking at it right now. Zone deals, looking at the game on Sunday between Carolina and Atlanta, $119. You can sit corner of the end zone on the Panthers sideline, seeing tickets for $102 in the end zone as well. A ton of great deals for Sunday in the app. Made it super simple. I could even see the exact view for my seat before I buy it, like right there. You see that right there? It's awesome. So I love Game Time because of that. And honestly, it's faster, cheaper, and less stressful than any other way I've bought tickets before. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create a promo code LOCKEDONNFL. That's LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go, download Game Time today. The final word heading into this Week 11 matchup between the Panthers and the Falcons. The Panthers so far this season have started off 0-2 with losses against Jacksonville and Arizona, and then bounced back with a dominant 30-0 win against the same Atlanta Falcons back in Week 3 inside Bank of America Stadium. Then they followed up with a loss on the road against the New England Patriots, then bounced back to win 3 straight games against the Dolphins, coming back from a 17-0 deficit, the Cowboys in a thrilling game, and then winning up in New York against the Jets. They followed those 3 wins up with a crushing loss at home against the Buffalo Bills, but then had the win of the season so far. Hopefully there'll be bigger ones. So far, the win of the season by winning in Green Bay, just to come crashing back down to earth on Sunday against the Saints at home, the previously 1-8 New Orleans Saints, might I add. So we have seen them bounce back from 0-2, bounce back from getting their ass kicked by New England and by Buffalo. Can they bounce back from what I think is the worst loss I've had so far this season and win in Atlanta on Sunday? That has at least been a part of this team's DNA to this point in time. And it's a good thing that they can bounce back. You would prefer that they're not having to always bounce back from crushing defeats, whether it's by a 30-point margin or just by losing to a team you have no business losing to at home. But they've been able to do it. We'll see if they can do it again on Sunday. And they're going to need to, because if you look at tankathon.com, our favorite website over here across the last couple of years on Locked On Panthers, the Panthers have the toughest remaining strength of schedule in the NFL. They're easy games because they have them categorized as the toughest games and the easiest game. No game is easy in the NFL. We just saw that last week as they lost to the Saints, something that many of you claim you saw coming. And I question whether you really saw that coming, but I understand where you're coming from for all the folks who did say they saw that was going to happen after the win. At least they joked about it happening, much like we were joking about after the 2-game win streak that, oh, watch them go lose to the Jets. They played bad, but they found a way to still beat the Jets because the Jets are, well, the Jets. But the Saints were capable, and they got it done. But this game on the road against Atlanta, plus the trip down to New Orleans after the bye week, are considered the easy games remaining on the Panthers schedule across the last 7 weeks of the year. The hard games, well, that's, of course, Monday Night Football against San Francisco. That's home against the Rams. That's playing Tampa home and away, and then facing our old buddy Sam Darnold and the Seahawks also later on this season. So if they're going to get any more wins, just based off of the toughest and the easiest games left on the schedule, it's going to be on Sunday against Atlanta, and then down in New Orleans, they're going to have to find a way against those other 4 opponents, but 5 games to steal a game. So yeah, this has to be the game that you win. And I'm not saying that the Panthers are only going to beat Atlanta and beat New Orleans. I would not be surprised that is the case. And 7-10 wouldn't be a bad year. Obviously, you don't want to go from being 5-4 on top of the world thinking that, okay, maybe this team's going to be ahead of schedule this year and then only win 2 of your remaining games after that. But that may be the reality for this team. What also would be the reality for this team is if they win on Sunday against the Falcons and the Bucs, who are playing in Buffalo, a Bills team coming off of a loss against the Miami Dolphins. Mike McDaniel, love that. This man, because you know how I feel. You heard me when they came to Buffalo week. I hate Buffalo. Every time the Bills lose, an angel gets its wings. I despise the Buffalo Bills and everybody who's come from Buffalo. Now, I know plenty of nice people from Buffalo, so I don't really actually despise them. You get what I'm trying to say? But for Buffalo to lose that game last week, and Mike McDaniel roll up to a Bills bar and just be laughing at them in his nice-ass car, even though he ain't going to be in South Beach much longer, was just, I loved it. But that's going to be a pissed-off football team that is going to need to bounce back, knowing that in the AFC, like they've already fallen behind against New England. They already lost that game at home on Sunday night. The Pats are 8-2. They get the Jets. Well, I'm recording this before Thursday Night Football. I don't want to jinx New England, but like, come on. So yeah, they're going to have to keep pace. So that's a big game for Buffalo against Tampa. And that's obviously a big game for Tampa, who's just coming off of a loss at home against New England. But I would think Tampa's going to lose. And if Tampa loses, they're 6-4. And if Carolina wins, they're 6-5. You do the math. That's 1 more win in the loss column, and you're a half game back in the NFC South through 11 weeks. And whether you win on Monday night or not, because I believe Tampa has like the Rams afterwards, whether you win on Monday night or not, you're going to be heading into Thanksgiving in the hunt, not necessarily just for a potential wild card, but for the division title, for a home playoff game for the first time since 2015. God, it's been that long. It's been a decade since you played a home game inside Bank of America Stadium in Uptown Charlotte during January for the playoffs. So I get the frustration from last week. I don't necessarily believe this is going to be a playoff team. I've never bought into that heading into the season. I bought into, like, obviously that's a possibility once you beat Green Bay. I can't necessarily shoot it down, but then they lose New Orleans. Like, okay, well, there we go. That's kind of why I didn't really believe they could be. But it's certainly on the table, and it's most likely going to happen if they win the division, which starts by winning this game on Sunday. And then, of course, getting some help from not your friends, your neighbors in Tampa on Sunday. So, yeah, man, if you're in the hunt on Thanksgiving, either a half game behind or maybe even ahead of Tampa, which could be possible, probably more likely a half game behind, you got to take that, especially after the last 2 seasons. They started off 1-7. So, yeah, last week was frustrating. The players not taking it seriously throughout the week is just it's something, man. I don't even need to say anything. But your team's 5-5. Has a chance to be 6-5 on Sunday and potentially a half game out of first place against the Bucs. You can't tell me you wouldn't have taken that had I given it to you before the season began. So let's see if they can get it done. Let's see if they can respond and bounce back yet again against the Falcons on Sunday. But that's going to wrap up this edition of the Locked On Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, hosted by yours truly, Julian Council. Again, y'all subscribe or follow the show for free over on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. And be sure to follow me, Julian Council, over on Twitter and Blue Sky at Julian Council, because I'm back with you next Wednesday answering your weekly Wednesday mailbag questions after the game on Sunday. I will be live. And after I go live, all you got to do is at me or DM me with your questions over on Twitter or Blue Sky at Julian Council, the exact same handle, and I'll get to your questions on Wednesday here on the show. But in the meantime, be safe, be happy, be whole. As always, keep pounding, and I will talk to y'all on Sunday, hopefully after a Panthers victory on the road against the Falcons.